An exposed mind is, well, it's a fatal weakness.
Yes, and reticence is really the ultimate strategic weapon in this endless, silent warfare of human interaction.
Because to lay your cards on the table, I mean, it's
Right.
not an act of nobility, it's not an act of honesty, it is quite simply intellectual suicide.
Right. In the theater of the world, where every glance is a calculation and, every word is a potential snare, to be entirely readable is to just invite your own ruin.
We walk through a world of predators and prey, and it's all masked by this thin veneer of courtesy, but the unseen is what actually governs.
The unspoken is what commands. We are here to impart a philosophy of survival, really. A transmission of these dark hidden truths passed down from a mastermind of worldly wisdom.
I want to pause right there, actually, because the gravity of what we were talking about today, it requires a complete shift in how you view your daily interactions.
Absolutely.
We are drawing upon the ancient strategic doctrines of Baltasar Gracian. And for those who might not know that name, let's set the stage a bit.
Well, we are talking about a man born in 1601 in the Kingdom of Aragon. Gracian was a Jesuit priest, but, not the cloistered, purely theological kind you might picture.
Right, he wasn't just sitting in a quiet monastery somewhere.
Not at all. He was a thinker who navigated the incredibly treacherous, whispered corridors of the 17th century Spanish court. And to understand his advice, you really have to understand that specific environment.
The Spanish court under Philip IV, I mean, it was a labyrinth of shifting allegiances, rampant favoritism, and just lethal gossip.
Lethal is the word. It was an environment where a single misplaced confidence could lead to social exile, or financial ruin, or, frankly, much worse.
You didn't survive by being the loudest or the most transparent. You survived by being the most observant and the least decipherable.
Exactly. Gracian saw human life for what it fundamentally is beneath the pleasantries. It is a relentless battleground of intellect and will.
And he wasn't just casually observing this, he was trained to dissect it. He was a product of the ratio studiorum. Can you explain what that actually was?
Sure, it translates roughly to the plan of studies. It was the official educational system of the Jesuit order, formalized in the late 16th century.
Right.
Imagine an education that combined the most rigorous classical rhetoric, Aristotelian logic, and deep theological study, but with a highly pragmatic goal.
Because the Jesuits were often advisors to kings and nobles, right?
Yeah.
They sought to influence the world by being active in it.
Exactly. So the ratio studiorum didn't just teach you what to think. It taught you how to construct an argument, how to anticipate your opponent's counter-argument, and how to read the psychological state of your audience.
It was basically intellectual combat training.
That is exactly what it was. And he takes this intense intellectual combat training, mixes it with his observations of the cutthroat Spanish court, and distills it into his masterpiece.
The Oraculo Manual y Arte de Prudencia, the art of worldly wisdom. What really fascinates me is that this wasn't written as some sprawling, theoretical textbook.
No, it's a collection of 300 maxims. Short, sharp, almost aggressive pieces of advice.
He wrote it for those who wish to command their destiny, not just, endure it. And interestingly, it was published under a pseudonym.
Likely because his superiors in the Jesuit order felt his writings were entirely too cynical and far too worldly for a priest.
But centuries later, philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer and Friedrich Nietzsche would just revere Gracian.
Nietzsche actually said that Europe had never produced anything finer or more subtle in the matter of moral and psychological observation.
Wow. And the foundation of his entire doctrine, it rests on three unshakable pillars: silence, secrecy, and mystery.
To survive the malice of men, you must shroud yourself in the impenetrable armor of the unknown.
Which brings us to the immediate, practical application for you today. We aren't navigating the Spanish court in velvet doublets, but the psychological warfare hasn't changed one bit.
Not at all. The modern equivalent is the corporate boardroom, the toxic family dynamic, the hyper-exposed arena of social media.
And Gracian's doctrine demands that we unlearn our modern impulse. We live in a society that screams at us to reveal everything.
Yes, to share, to quote-unquote live our truth out loud, to over-explain ourselves at every turn.
Gracian says no. We must enter the holy of holies of worldly wisdom. Let's look at his third maxim, the power of suspense.
He commands, keep matters for a time in suspense. He teaches that admiration is directly heightened by novelty and mystery.
The moment you declare your resolution, you strip yourself of your power.
You really do.
I want to break down the mechanics of this, though. The actual cognitive psychology of why keeping things in suspense works. Why does the human brain react this way?
Well, it comes down to the human brain's fundamental intolerance for ambiguity. Neurologically speaking, when we are presented with a puzzle, an unknown, or an unfinished action, our brains fixate on it.
Right, there's a concept in psychology closely related to this, the Zeigarnik effect.
Exactly. It states that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones. When a matter is kept in suspense, it creates a void of information.
And nature, especially human nature, absolutely abhors a vacuum.
It does. When you do not declare your intentions immediately, you force others into a state of dependent observation. Their brains cannot close the loop.
They are waiting for your move.
And in that waiting, they concede their psychological power to you.
So by putting your cards on the table, you're actually giving the audience the closure they crave, which allows them to just move on from you.
Precisely. You take an idea that is boundless in the imagination of your audience, an idea full of potential threat, potential brilliance, potential change.
And you reduce it to a finite, static reality.
And a finite reality can be immediately judged. It can be critiqued. As Gracian notes, a resolution declared is never highly thought of. It only leaves room for criticism.
Because if you declare your grand plan, everyone immediately starts looking for the flaws.
Always. And if you fail after declaring your intentions, you are doubly unfortunate. The failure is public, and the anticipation you built was entirely wasted.
Okay, I have to push back on this, or at least challenge the emotional reality of living this way. I understand the power dynamic, but doesn't this kind of perpetual silence breed deep distrust?
What do you mean?
Well, if I am constantly shrouding my actions in mystery, my colleagues might not venerate me. They might simply avoid me. Think of it like this. If you walk up to a completely dark room, you don't trust it.
No, you certainly don't.
You don't revere the room, you fear it. You hesitate at the threshold because the darkness might conceal a threat, a drop-off, a predator.
That is a potent analogy.
Isn't Gracian advising us to become a dark room? And doesn't that just make people want to turn on the lights or leave the house entirely?
You are absolutely right that it breeds discomfort. People will absolutely hesitate at the threshold of that dark room. But here is the critical concession you must make if you are to adopt this philosophy.
What is that?
Gracian is not aiming for your comfort, nor is he aiming for you to be liked. Friendship and camaraderie operate on transparency, yes, but power and survival operate on opacity.
So it's a completely different rule book.
Entirely. Fear and veneration, in the realm of strategy, are siblings. They are born of the exact same psychological mechanism, the recognition of a force greater than oneself, a force that cannot be predicted, mapped, or controlled.
So the discomfort is the point.
It is the mechanism of control. Gracian does not shy away from the weight of this. In fact, he delivers a chilling instruction to cement this idea.
What does he say?
He says, imitate the divine way when you cause men to wonder and watch.
Imitate the divine way. That is an incredibly heavy mandate. It almost feels arrogant, frankly.
It is audacious, but consider the metaphor of the cosmos. Think about how humanity has historically interacted with the divine. God or the universe or nature does not explain the turning of the stars.
Right. The cosmos does not issue manifestos detailing the mechanics of a thunderstorm or the shifting of tectonic plates.
It simply acts. And mortals wonder. They watch, they interpret, they build entire mythologies trying to guess the intentions of the storm. The divine is powerful precisely because it is inexplicable.
Wow. So when you explain yourself, you descend from the divine to the mortal.
Exactly. You transfer the power from the actor, which is yourself, to the critics who consume and judge your explanation.
Let's ground this for the listener because this is where it gets incredibly practical. Think about your daily routine. Where are you bleeding power by over-explaining your actions?
It happens constantly.
I'm picturing the classic modern scenario. You have to decline an invitation or maybe push back a deadline at work. What does the average person do?
They send an email with 5 paragraphs of justification.
Yes, I'm so sorry, but my kid is sick and the car broke down and I've been really overwhelmed with this other project, so I think it's best if we delay until next week, if that's okay with you.
Ah, yes. The labyrinth of justification.
Right. And what happens mechanically when you send that email? You have handed the recipient 5 different variables to judge you on.
They can judge your time management, your priorities, your personal life.
Every extra sentence is a leakage of power. Every unprompted explanation is a stone removed from the walls of your own citadel. What would Gracian say that email should be?
He would say, circumstances require that we delay this initiative until next week. I will follow up then.
Boom, that's it.
And look at the difference in the recipient's mind. The modern world falsely equates visibility with value and volume with importance. But true weight is found in the withholding.
When you state a decision without the labyrinth of justification, you become an immovable object.
The minds of your peers will scramble to fill the void of your silence. And because of the halo effect, which is a cognitive bias where we assume someone who is stoic and silent possesses hidden wisdom, they will often project a greater intelligence onto you.
A deeper strategy than you may even actually possess. You literally let their imagination do the heavy lifting for your reputation.
Precisely.
But to maintain this divine suspense, this godlike silence, you can't just stop talking. You have to ensure that your internal mechanisms don't betray you.
Your facial expressions, your desires, they cannot betray that external facade.
You have to seal the gates. And that leads us to the next critical phase of Gracian's strategy, what he calls the gates of the soul, and the absolute necessity of writing your intentions in Cypher.
We're moving to Maxim 98 here. Gracian identifies the passions, our desires, our fears, our vanities, as these very gates.
And if your passions are the gates, then they are the primary points of entry for any besieging army.
Exactly. The most practical knowledge a person can acquire, he asserts, consists in disguising these passions. He warns, using the metaphor of a gambler, never to play with exposed cards.
Because if you play with exposed cards, you guarantee the loss of your stakes.
He introduces a bizarre, yet perfectly apt biological metaphor here, the policy of the cuttlefish.
Let's really look at this creature because it is a brilliant analogy for human warfare.
The cuttlefish is a master of evasion in the dark ocean depths. When it is threatened by a predator, or when it is navigating dangerous exposed waters, it does not try to outswim a faster opponent.
Because it can't.
Right. Instead, it ejects a thick cloud of dark ink. It clouds the waters, it blinds the predators of curiosity.
It escapes not by moving faster, but by obliterating the visibility of its environment.
Exactly. Let's map this onto the mechanics of human exploitation, because if we are honest about how people use each other, Gracian was dead on.
If others know your tastes, your desires, your passions, you have essentially handed them the exact GPS coordinates for your destruction.
People will use your known desires against you in one of two ways. First, they will frustrate your desires to cause you pain, to provoke you into making a mistake, or to break your spirit.
And second, and this is far more insidious, they will flatter your desires to manipulate your will.
Yes. If they know you desperately want to be seen as the smartest person in the room, they will praise your intellect just to get you to take on extra unpaid work.
Both frustration and flattery are forms of absolute control over you.
And that is exactly how the 17th century Spanish court operated. It was an economy fueled almost entirely by leveraged desires.
If a cunning courtier knew the vanity of a rival, he could flatter it to lead that rival into a political trap.
Or if he knew the rival's secret fear of poverty, he could orchestrate circumstances to trigger that fear, making the rival desperate and prone to rash decisions.
To have a known passion is to wear a leash around your neck. It merely waits for someone observant and ruthless enough to pick it up.
That is a stark way to put it, but it is true.
But I need to raise a profound philosophical dilemma here. If we are constantly writing our intentions in Cypher, if we continuously cloud the waters with cuttlefish ink every time someone tries to get close to us,
Yes.
do we not condemn ourselves to absolute isolation? I look at the human heart like a fortress. Yes, a fortress needs thick stone walls, heavy iron gates, and a moat to keep the marauders out.
It does.
But if you seal it too tightly, if you brick up every window and weld the portcullis shut to the point where nothing and no one can ever enter, you starve your own inhabitants.
You die of a siege from within.
Doesn't this cuttlefish strategy destroy the very soul it is trying to protect?
That is the eternal conflict, isn't it? The deep human yearning for connection versus the brutal necessity of survival.
Right.
But Gracian would look at your fortress analogy and offer a cold, unyielding reality check. True safety requires sacrificing the vanity of being understood.
The vanity of being understood, that stings.
It does. The desire to be understood by the world at large is a dangerous adolescent indulgence. Gracian believed deeply that knowledge of the evil is a means of defense.
If you reveal your desires to the world, you hand your enemies the exact blueprint of your destruction.
You must choose. Do you want the warm, fleeting comfort of transparency, or do you want the enduring security of power?
So he's saying the world is not a therapist's couch, the world is a battlefield. And you don't use the cuttlefish ink on your spouse or your deepest confidant, but you absolutely use it in the boardroom.
Precisely. Let's paint a picture of this cuttlefish strategy in action in a modern scenario.
Okay, set the scene.
Imagine you are at your company's annual retreat. The atmosphere is casual, drinks are flowing. A colleague, someone who competes with you for resources, casually sidles up to you.
The predator senses an opening.
Exactly. They ask, so what do you think of the new vice president's restructuring plan? Rumor is you might be making a move for the director role.
A classic trap. If I say I hate the plan, they weaponize that as insubordination.
And if you say you are going for the director role, you've exposed your ambition and given them time to prepare a counter-campaign.
So what do?
You do not offer a clear yes or no. You release the ink.
How does the ink sound in a conversation like that?
You use vague words, non-committal agreements, and strategic ambiguity. You look them in the eye and say, it's certainly a complex situation with a lot of moving parts.
Wow.
Leadership always has to make difficult choices during a transition. I imagine time will reveal the best course of action for all of us.
That is brilliant. Let's look at what just happened mechanically. You offered words that structurally sound like a thoughtful answer. You maintained eye contact. You used a pleasant tone.
But the sentence contains absolutely zero actionable substance.
The predator is swimming in the black cloud. They can't attack you for saying leadership makes difficult choices because it's an undeniable platitude.
But they also have no idea what your endgame is. You slipped away into the abyss.
You must become an unreadable text. Gracian insists that you do not even let your mundane tastes be known.
If your peers know you crave public praise, they will feed it to you until you are a compliant puppet.
If they know you despise a certain administrative task, they will assign it to you, hoping to force an error born of your frustration.
By adopting the cuttlefish strategy, a text that cannot be read cannot be weaponized.
So I've hidden my desires, I've clouded the waters around my passions. But what about my actual, tangible skills?
Their capabilities.
Right. If my rivals can't figure out what I want, won't they just try to measure what I can do to see if I'm a threat? This brings us to Section 3 of Gracian's doctrine, the illusion of infinite depth.
This is Maxim 94. Gracian writes, the wise never allow their knowledge and abilities to be sounded to the bottom.
You may let men know you, meaning they know your name and your general disposition, but you must never let them comprehend you.
No one must know the absolute extent of your abilities, lest they be disappointed, or, far worse, lest they calculate a precise way to defeat you.
There is a ruthless mathematical reality to human perception here. The moment a limit is perceived, it is conquered.
It is a fundamental law of geometry and warfare.
If I am fighting you, and I know the exact length of your sword, I know exactly where I need to stand to stay 1 inch out of its reach.
And you know exactly how long your spear needs to be to strike me down without danger to yourself.
Exactly. If a rival knows exactly how smart you are, exactly how wealthy you are, or exactly who is in your network, they can run the calculus of your defeat.
But the unknown. The unknown breaks the equation. It cannot be calculated against.
It is the difference between a bounded territory and an infinite horizon. Bounded territories are mapped. Once they are mapped, they are besieged.
And eventually, they are conquered. The infinite horizon, however, simply inspires awe, hesitation, and a profound sense of smallness in the observer.
If no one ever has an opportunity to fathom you entirely, to drop a measuring line and hit the bottom of your capability, you remain a perpetual threat and a perpetual marvel.
Let's play devil's advocate here. I can see a type A, hyper-competitive person arguing for a purely offensive strategy instead.
Okay, let's hear it.
Shouldn't a warrior flex their muscles to intimidate the enemy? Think of a standing army. Nations hold grand military parades.
Right. They march thousands of infantrymen down the avenue. They roll their intercontinental ballistic missiles through the Capitol Square.
They fly their stealth bombers overhead in formation. The entire point of the parade is to show their absolute might, to visually terrorize their rivals into submission.
Why shouldn't an individual do the exact same thing? Why not parade your intellect, name-drop your connections, and display all your resources to terrify your office rivals into backing down?
Because your analogy contains its own fatal flaw. A paraded army can be counted.
Yes.
Its weapons can be measured, its soldiers can be numbered, its logistics can be analyzed by satellite imagery. What you call intimidation Gracian accurately dismisses as vanity.
The moment you roll all your tanks into the public square, your enemy knows exactly how many tanks you have.
And more importantly, they know how many anti-tank missiles they need to manufacture to defeat you.
Gracian relies on a much darker, much more profound truth. Guesses and doubts about the extent of your talents arouse more veneration than accurate knowledge of them, be they ever so great.
Guesses and doubts arouse more veneration than accurate knowledge. That is a complete paradigm shift.
We assume that if we are genuinely great at something, proving it is the best strategy. Gracian says proving it reduces it.
Let us use the metaphor of the well. A bottomless well is terrifying, precisely because the stone dropped into it makes no sound.
You drop the stone, you wait, and you hear nothing. The mind reels at the depth.
But what happens if the stone hits the bottom? Even if the well is incredibly deep, say 500 feet deep, the terror instantly vanishes the moment the sound of the strike echoes up.
It is no longer an infinite abyss. It is now just a deep hole. It has a measurement.
Exactly. When you keep your abilities partially concealed, the imagination of your rival takes over. And human imagination, fueled by insecurity, will always conjure a greater, more formidable threat than reality can actually provide.
This is a massive warning against the modern urge to display. We live in an era of digital parades.
Every achievement, every certification, every half-formed thought is paraded on LinkedIn, in meetings, in casual conversations.
People are terrified of not being seen, of not being recognized for their exact worth. We want the world to know we hit the bottom of the well.
But Gracian is telling you that by displaying your exact worth, you are actively devaluing yourself. You are allowing yourself to be priced, categorized, filed away, and ultimately strategized against.
By deliberately leaving something to the imagination, you become larger than life in the minds of your adversaries. Consider how this looks in practice.
You are assigned a complex task. You perform it brilliantly, executing it with precision, and then you fall silent.
You don't brag about the late nights, you don't explain your methodology, you don't seek validation.
What happens? Your peers wonder, if they did that so effortlessly and have nothing to say about it, what else are they holding back? What are they truly capable of?
You keep your final touches, your ultimate reserves, entirely to yourself. You maintain a hidden rearguard of intellect and power.
You essentially double your resources simply by not showing half of them.
But to maintain this illusion of infinite depth, to keep the well soundless, to keep the cuttlefish ink thick and ready, the hardest battle of all must be fought.
And it is not fought against the enemy across the table.
No, it is fought against oneself. The wild beast within must be chained. This requires absolute self-mastery, which brings us to the final phase of this doctrine, the seal of capacity and the mechanics of reticence.
Gracian merges several thoughts here, primarily found in Maxims 179 and 222. He declares, reticence is the seal of capacity.
Meaning, to have capacity like intelligence, skill, potential, is useless if it lacks the seal of reticence to protect it.
He says a breast without a secret is an open letter, and he describes the human tongue in the most visceral, violent terms. The tongue is a wild beast. Once loose, it cannot be chained.
The physical and spiritual discipline required to remain completely silent, to be truly reticent, is staggering. Most people simply cannot do it.
Gracian calls the tongue the pulse of the soul.
Just as a doctor checks a pulse to determine the physical health of a heart, wise men listen to a person's tongue to judge the health of their inner life.
An erratic, constantly wagging tongue, prone to gossip and over-explanation, indicates a fevered, uncontrolled, and weak soul.
To fully understand the depth of this requirement, we must dissect a specific ancient myth that Gracian references to make his point. He brings up the myth of Momus.
For those unfamiliar in Greek mythology, Momus was the god of mockery, blame, and harsh censure.
According to the fable, when the gods, specifically Zeus, Prometheus, and Athena, were creating humanity, Momus stood by and criticized the design.
His primary critique was a fascinating one. He said man was flawed because he did not have a window in his breast.
Momus wished men had literal windows in their chests so that their secret thoughts, their hidden intentions, and their true natures could be seen by everyone at all times.
That is a terrifying concept. Absolute, inescapable transparency, a world where you cannot hide a single fleeting thought.
It is the ultimate vulnerability, and Gracian entirely rebukes the desire of Momus. He says the wise man does not want a window in his breast.
Instead, the wise man models himself after two other figures from antiquity, Janus and Argus.
Janus was the Roman god of doorways, beginnings, and transitions, famously depicted with two faces, one looking backward into the past, and one looking forward into the future.
Gracian says the wise man is a Janus for impartiality, seeing all angles, and he must be an Argus for watchfulness.
Ergus Panopticus was a giant from Greek mythology who possessed 100 eyes distributed all over his body. He was the ultimate unsleeping watchman.
Gracian's point is profound. The wise man keeps the window of his breast firmly, immovably bricked up.
He is Argus. He sees everything others are doing, but he allows nothing of himself to be seen.
But I marvel at the sheer exhaustion this requires. Think about the mental toll.
Graydon has this incredible line, "You must pay ransom to each you tell."
Every time you share a secret, every time you let a piece of your inner reality slip, you give away a hostage.
And you are forced to pay a continuous ransom of your own peace of mind, forever worrying if that person will betray you.
With the vigilance required to never let the beast out of the cage, it is a constant, grinding, agonizing effort.
Because the people around you aren't passive. They use irony, they use contradiction, they use cross-questioning like intellectual thumbscrews to force the beast of your tongue out of its cage. They desperately want you to slip.
They do, and they are relentless because your silence makes them deeply insecure. But I must confirm the severity of the path Gracian lays before us.
Reticence is not merely a conversational tactic. It is the ultimate triumph of the human will. It is the absolute mastery of the self.
Gracian delivers what might be his most absolute, unyielding law regarding this. What must be done need not be said, and what must be said need not be done.
Let that echo for a moment. What must be done need not be said. Action is supreme. The announcement of action is a vulnerability. To speak is to bleed power.
We must detail the exact tactics enemies use to break this seal, because you must learn to recognize them not as mere conversational quirks, but as active siege warfare against your mind.
Let's look at the first tactic, the feigned doubt.
They pretend to disbelieve you or deliberately misunderstand a situation. They do this knowing that human vanity will surge.
Your pride will urge you to correct them, to explain yourself, to reveal your true depth of knowledge just to prove you are right.
The moment you start correcting them, the beast is out of the cage.
Or what about the strategic contradiction? This happens in meetings all the time.
Someone will state an opinion completely opposite to yours, taking the objectively wrong side of an argument just to agitate your passions.
They want you to get angry because they know that a mind in a state of emotional passion cannot keep the gates sealed.
Anger overrides the intellect, and the beast slips the chain to attack.
And perhaps the most dangerous, insidious siege tactic of all, the warm smile that begs for a confidence, the fabricated intimacy.
A colleague approaches you, lowers their voice, and shares a minor, relatively harmless secret with you. They create a false economy of trust.
They are banking on the deeply ingrained social law of reciprocity, hoping that because they gave you a secret, you will feel socially compelled to hand over a real, damaging secret in return.
You must train your mind to frame these gestures, not as friendly overtures, but as battering rams swinging against the gates of your fortress.
You literally have to view every conversation as a potential extraction operation. You are guarding the holy of holies.
So let's weave these heavy threads together into a singular, impenetrable armor for you.
First, we have the power of suspense. Keeping them waiting, letting their minds fill the void, imitating the silent power of the divine.
Second, we have the ciphered intentions. The policy of the cuttlefish, releasing the ink of ambiguity to blind the predators of curiosity.
Third, we have the fathomless capacity, the bottomless well that terrifies specifically because the stone makes no sound when dropped.
And finally, we have the chained tongue, the brooked-up window of the breast, the hundred-eyed vigilance of Argus.
This is the synthesis of Gracian's dark, powerful truths. He strips away the illusion that the world is a grand, supportive fellowship.
It is a theater of malice. Survival, let alone victory, belongs exclusively to those who master the shadows.
To be readable is to be readable to your own ruin. To be an open book is to invite anyone with an agenda to tear out your pages and rewrite your ending to suit their needs.
But to be a mystery is to be a master.
Tomorrow morning, you are going to walk back into the world. You will step into the office, the boardroom, the negotiation table, or the social arena.
But you do not walk in unarmed anymore. You walk in wearing this ancient forged armor.
You are no longer an open letter waiting to be read and discarded. You are the cuttlefish, ready to release ink into the probing waters of inquiry.
You are the bottomless well, swallowing the stones of their judgment and giving back absolute silence.
You are the silent watcher with 100 eyes open to their tactics and the window to your chest permanently sealed in brick and iron.
But as we leave you with this armory of the mind, as you take up the mantle of Baltasar Gracian's worldly wisdom, we must pose a final lingering thought.
Gracian warned that a breast without a secret is an open letter, vulnerable to the wind and the fire of the world's malice. He is right.
You must build these walls. You must seal the fortress to survive.
But as you build these impenetrable walls of silence to lock the world out, as you forge the chains for the wild beast of your tongue, ask yourself, as you stand alone in the perfect, unreadable dark, when the fortress is perfectly sealed, what kind of darkness are you locking in?